So let's look at this problem together. Now let's start by looking at the parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction reminder that I've given you on the side. PEMDAS helps us remember the order that we solve problems. So in this problem, I see several operations, and I have to remember that there are parentheses in this problem, and that's always where I start. There are also brackets, so we have to remember that parentheses doesn't just mean parentheses. It means parentheses and brackets, or some of you may have learned GEMDAS instead of PEMDAS, with the G standing for grouping symbols. Parentheses and brackets are both grouping symbols, and all grouping symbols or parentheses, all types of parentheses, have to be completed before anything else in the problem is done. So let's look at this problem. Inside my parentheses, I see a couple of things. I see subtraction, and then I see this 2 right beside the parentheses with the 1 and 2 tenths, and there's no symbol between those two. I have to remember that when there's a number right beside the parentheses and no symbol between them, that means I have to multiply. So I know that this means I'm going to multiply. So then I can look at my reminders over here. Inside the parentheses, I have to follow the order of operations just like I do outside the parentheses. So I don't want to be tempted to do 4 and 5 tenths minus 2, then multiply. I follow my order of operations just like I do outside the parentheses. So I have to multiply before I can subtract. So remember, we're going to write everything down as we go, and we're going to replace this operation with its answer. So we're going to start by coming over here and multiplying 1 and 2 tenths times 2. And when I multiply that, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 1 is 2, and then I have to put the decimal in the right place. I don't want to be tempted to think the answer is 24, because if I have something a little bit more than 1 multiplied by 2, I'm not going to get 24 as an answer, because 1 times 2 is nowhere near 24. So I have to look at the decimal points that I have. I can see that here I have 1 digit in this factor after the decimal point, and in the second factor I don't have any places after the decimal point. It's a whole number 2. So if there's 1 decimal point after the factors here and 0 after the decimal point in the factor here, then I need a total of 1 decimal point after, or 1 digit after the decimal point in my product. So 1 here plus 0 here is a total of 1 decimal place. So my product needs 1 decimal place. So I'm going to rewrite the problem, and I'm going to replace this 2 times 1 and 2 tenths with its answer of 2 and 4 tenths. I'm keeping this bracket because I still have work to do inside the bracket, but I don't need to write the parentheses down anymore because I've done that part. Okay, now here's where we have to remember the important thing is that we have not finished with the parentheses and brackets yet, because just like we just talked about a minute ago, this means multiply, but we're not going to multiply before we subtract, because this is inside the parentheses. So subtraction has to come first in this case, because I have to finish the parentheses before I do anything outside the parentheses. So my next step is to subtract 4 and 5 tenths minus 2 and 4 tenths. When I subtract, I bring the decimal point straight down. I didn't get to do that when I multiplied, but when I subtract, I do. And then I replace this operation with its answer. So I'm going to have 4, then my 2 and 1 tenth. I still have to work with that. Now, we said a couple of times now that this means multiply. So that's my only thing left to do in the numerator part of this problem. So I need to do 2 and 1 tenth times 4. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2, come back here, is 8. And then I can look and see in this factor there's 1 place after the decimal. In this factor there's 0 places after the decimal. So I need a total of 1 place after the decimal in my product. So my decimal goes here, and I'm going to replace this part of the problem with my answer, 8 and 4/10. Now, a lot of you may be wondering at this point, what does that line and the 2 below it even mean? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Well, let's think for just a second. What does it look like? Well, it looks a little like a fraction, except we don't put decimal numbers with fractions like this. But let's think about it from an operation standpoint. If this was a whole number, if this said 8 on the numerator and 2 on the denominator, what would you do to simplify that? Well, you would divide because it would be an improper fraction. So this symbol, all it means to do is divide. That's all. It's not trying to be tricky. It just is another way to write division. So we're going to do 8 and 4/10 divided by 2. 8 goes into 2 4 times. Bring down my 4. 2 goes into 4 2 times with nothing left over. I don't want you to think the answer is 42. I have forgotten a very important step. I have to bring my decimal point straight up. 4 2/10 would make sense for my answer. I know that because if I look back at my problem that I'm solving, if I thought about this as whole numbers, 8 divided by 2 is 4. So my answer should be somewhere close to 4. 42 is nowhere close to 4, but 4 2/10 is very close to 4, so my answer makes sense. So my answer to this whole long problem is 4 2/10.